used to go back to him and say, here's all the reasons why I was justified in popping off at you, which
is not helpful.
Makes it worse. But now I have learned to just go, hey, I value the relationship with you, our relationship, more than I value being right. Even though I might have been 100% right, even though I may be 100% valid in the way that I feel, that doesn't make me speaking to you, in a negative way. That doesn't make it okay. Welcome to the Todd Barham Leadership Podcast. Like and subscribe wherever you listen to this content and share it with a friend.
Okay, Pastor Todd, a couple of weeks ago, we discussed feedback, and I want to talk about something personal.
Oh, great. Here we go.
That ties into that I think a lot of people struggle with, and I wonder sometimes if people even realize that they struggle with it.
Okay.
And it is being reactionary in all forms of professional settings.
Okay.
All across the board.
Yeah. Well, I mean, really, we're conditioned to be reactionary because, social media asks for our reactions. What is your reaction based upon an emoji? We are a very reactionary society, but in our leadership sometimes it's very easy for us to be reactionary because let's just face it, we're dealing with people, and the people that we deal with oftentimes express their emotions to us, and oftentimes we're getting opinions that we don't necessarily ask for, and so it is very easy to be reactionary. But even as a leader, sometimes when things get hot, when the temperature gets high, it's easy for us to react to a situation instead of being well thought out in our response.
Learning and growing every day. So you say that we have developed as a society, we've developed that our opinions are important, mm-hmm. and that they matter, and that we are always entitled to them.
Sure.
And so we've conditioned ourselves to react, mm-hmm. as a whole. So once we enter into a position of leadership, or even say if we have, like when we tell our interns about leading when not in charge all the way, per se, once you enter into that, speak from a leader's perspective, when you have someone come onto your team and you recognize that, and you are free to use me as an example, because it is something that I hold dear to my heart. Once I recognized that I was a very reactionary person, well, then I had to, why? And where is it coming from?
Sure.
So when you recognize you have someone like that, especially someone who can blow in very hot, very quickly like me, what are some steps that you take to draw that out of the person? Because I would have never really understood that part of me had you not been given the permission and to say, are you aware that you're like this?
Well, a lot of the reasons why I can pick up on that in somebody is I'm very reactionary myself. I am, my wife would want me to say, because she does listen to the podcast, that I tend to be a hothead at times. I have gotten so much better. 18-year-old Todd, if 18-year-old Todd was in the position that 40-year-old Todd had, 18-year-old Todd probably wouldn't have as big a church. Because when people chirp at me on Facebook, I can't tell you how many times I have typed out an entire response and the Holy Spirit says delete that.
Yeah.
I know that your favorite new feature of the iPhone is the unsend button. You do that a lot. And I'll just jack with April because it's fun, because she'll send me something.
So does Crystal.
And it'll go unsend. And then I have no messages from her. And so I'll just text back and go, hey, did you need something?
Or you'll say, if it's late at night, is everything okay? And I'm like, everything's fine.
It's fine.
Let me sit on it.
The Lord has gotten a hold of me. And I no longer want to talk about this. But I would say our gut reaction as a human is to be reactionary. I've met very few leaders that aren't very reactionary. Now, your more seasoned leaders often don't give their initial reaction. And the one thing that I've had to learn to do is I've had to learn to stew. So
That just makes me more mad.
it does make me more mad at times. I'll tell you, there are some times that I am so ticked off after service. I will say in the calendar year that we're talking about, there was one Sunday that I left here that so many things happened, and it wasn't this Sunday. Because I know you're going through your head right now.
I forgot offering for those ministry people listening. My husband was at home sick, and Pastor Crystal, the pastor's wife, says, "Do we have ushers?" And I'm on the front row, and my soul left my body. Amen to all of those
Well,
church staff members.
it wasn't a big deal because it was my wife.
Everybody,
asking me.
our people stepped in, our volunteers and our
Yeah.
church members saved me, but I died for a few seconds.
Yeah, they panicked.
So
and went,
thank you for adding that it wasn't
They
this
panicked.
Sunday.
It wasn't this Sunday. But, it was one of those Sundays. And we've all had those Sundays where nothing goes right.
Yeah.
Everybody forgets that they're supposed to be on stage. Everybody forgets something called a smooth transition. Nothing irks me more than not smooth transition. It drives me nuts. Like in service, when we're standing around going, what are we doing next? Or is there a video on the screen?
Okay.
Not smooth transitions. There was, I'm glad I sat and slept on it, because had I sent y'all the message that I wanted to send you Sunday night, it probably would have wounded y'all. Now, that's not to say that there's not times that I don't feel warranted to send it. April knows where I'm going with this. Christmas Eve. We all just forgot that
we were too comfortable.
We all just forgot that we were in ministry on Christmas Eve. And I thought to myself, I go, this is Christmas Eve. Do I need to send this on Christmas Eve? And I went, yeah, I'm going to send this on Christmas Eve. I'm this upset that I'm going to send this. And I sent out the message. And you know what? The following Sunday, everyone was here early. We all kind of, it's Christmas Eve. So I think everybody kind of got lost in the fact that it was Christmas Eve, and didn't show up here at the times that they normally do. And it wasn't just one person. It was everybody.
Yeah.
We all kind of just slid in sideways and just, I get it. It's Christmas Eve. And what stinks about ministry is we have holidays the same as everybody, but like Christmas Eve and Easter, we're expected to show up and give our best job on a day where everybody's just sitting back and relaxing. And the problem is our younger team just went, this is a fun holiday. And we were out of our routine enough that it was an evening service that no one tracked that, hey, I need to be here at this time in order for this to be successful. And Christmas Eve was just not our best. And so if you attended Hope Church on Christmas Eve, and we're like, man, that wasn't our normal service, you are right. It wasn't our normal service. But I've expressed my frustration. I don't think I was mean.
I would say that the way that you handled it from where I sat, it sent the message that, one, you were ticked.
Yeah.
Two, we all got on a group chat. What's he talking about? We immediately started breaking it apart, with exception to the new staff members who really they were so green that they could
They're
not
so
have,
green they don't know what they missed.
And so it was immediately instead of us reacting, we responded.
Right.
And I would say that that's also a reason I knew you had enough to pull from recently to have this conversation.
Yeah.
Because you get to a point where you're not reacting, you're responding.
Right.
And so we were responding, but also there was a time that we responded amongst each other before we responded to you. And it even carried into the following staff meeting of, we wanted, instead of reacting to your reaction, we wanted to get to the bottom of it. And to me, that's when I looked and went, as a team, we've arrived.
Right.
That this is how we processed it, handled it, and came out on the other side.
And we made a decision regarding Christmas Eve that, I know church members listen to the podcast, so I'm not going to necessarily say what our decision is yet. I'm not ready to get your emails on that yet. You will find out eventually. But we made a productive decision based upon the information that we had. Because I posed the question, is it impossible to have a service on Christmas Eve that is at the level that we always have? Because
produce a service.
if we can't put on a service as good as we always put it on, then it doesn't need to happen because we look silly.
Right.
And that was the question that I asked them, which is a legitimate question. I mean, it's something that we should always ask. Are we able to do our normal? But you have to walk the fine line, because the reactionary person in me on Christmas Eve wanted to ruin all of your Christmases.
Well, you ruined mine. Thank you.
I'm sorry. But what I'm saying is I gave you a calculated response,
Right. Yes.
enough that it made you think about
Yeah.
it on
Oh,
Christmas,
yeah.
but it didn't make you think that I hated your ever-living guts.
Yes. Yes.
Now,
It was very
I won't
productive.
say whether or not I hated all of your ever-living guts that night, but God is still working in my heart too.
But that's the reality behind being reactionary,
Right.
because we talk about self-regulation, we talk about self-management, but the reactionary part of it is who God created us and the talents and the abilities that he gave us. Part of it is how we were raised and the environment that we're in our marriages and in the season of life. There's a lot that goes into we're reacting, and then you just put just the personal things, because we don't share everything personal, and sometimes that reaction is picked up. And so for you as a leader, when if you've spent that much time getting us to respond instead of reacting to you, what is it that you've take us into how you have recognized relationally with each of your staff members, because I feel like we're all reactionary in a different way.
In a way.
Not all of them. I mean, everybody knows when April says, "Oh, really? Well, help me understand."
some of us
Everybody
react.
knows what's coming.
Yeah.
Some people don't react in that way. So what are some things that you've had to do to pick that up within your staff and the people that you lead to help control your response and your reactions?
Right. Well, I mean, some of our staff, they're like us, and April and I are very similar in our personalities. You psychologists that listen to this probably have already picked up on that.
And wonder how we work together.
Yeah. Not always very well, sometimes very good. And some of our staff reacts, but they internalize it. So they go talk to somebody else about it instead of, you and I confront each other. They go and talk to somebody else about it. Now, I don't think that's negative. They're not going around and telling on me and saying. So I'm not saying that in a negative.
We have a
light.
really safe space among
Yeah.
the staff. I don't think anybody would care I shared this
Yeah.
without asking them first. We have a really safe space that we can ground each other, and we all have the freedom to check hearts and all the things, which is really, I think, special and cool about.
All of our staff has worked with me long enough that we've all had an instance in which I got ticked to a point that I might have been a little out of line with the staff member. But what I've modeled to the staff member is, even though what I was saying was 100% valid, the way I said it wasn't okay. And I've gone to each and every one of them and said, "Hey, listen, I screwed up. I'm sorry. Will you accept my apology?" And I don't say, "I'm sorry, but you shouldn't have been a butthole anyway." No, I just say, "Hey, the way I handled it was not right."
Your intent over your influence.
Right. We can talk about what we were talking about later. What is more important to me right now is the relationship that we have. And I've modeled that to the staff. And the reason that they know now that I care about them is because with each of them. And we have some pretty new staff. So there's going to be some times that I'm going to have to be mean to them and then come back and apologize. I know it's going to happen. That's
the dark part of
Yeah,
it,
it's just
isn't it?
unavoidable. There's going to be one day where I'm not on my game and I just pop off at somebody because I'm a hothead. It happens.
Well, and you're a human being.
And I'm a human, yeah. But I've been in ministry long enough to know that when I pop off, when I'm a hothead, the best thing is, I used to go back to him and say, "Here's all the reasons why I was justified in popping off at you," which
It's not helpful.
makes it worse. But now I have learned to just go, "Hey, I value the relationship with you, our relationship, more than I value being right. Even though I might have been 100% right, even though I may be 100% valid in the way that I feel, that doesn't make me speaking to you, in a negative way. That doesn't make it okay." And I think sometimes we as leaders think we can say whatever we want because we're in charge and we sign everybody's paychecks. Yes, in one way, yes, we are the boss. But in another way, we have to understand we have a responsibility to lead these people. God has given each of these people that we're leading to us as a gift to shepherd and to steward. And if we're not doing that correctly, then we're really sinning is the problem. And that's the issue, because, you know, we're coming out of, as a church, we're coming out of an authoritarian model where what the pastor says goes and blah, blah, blah. And really most staffs that you're seeing are more team oriented, at least your successful staffs. Now, I'm not saying that there's not any successful churches that have an authoritarian model. And I'm not even saying that that's necessarily wrong. But in an authoritarian model, what the pastor says goes, and there's no room for input.
Right.
The problem is most pastors are aging to a point to where they no longer have the pulse on the culture. And we need younger people on our staff. We need different people on our staff to tell us, hey, listen, you live in a bubble where everybody tells you everything's nice and neat. What I found is people will lie directly to your face because you are the pastor.
Yes.
And then they'll go tell the staff member something different. I'm like, what the heck? You know, I've had people tell me, I've recruited for you guys before and said, so-and-so is going to be there Sunday to work for you, and they don't show up for you, which is crazy. And I'm like, they told me, they'll lie to my face, which is crazy. But we have to develop, you can't be an authoritarian. We know, yes, pastor's the boss, pastor calls the shots, but we should have such a team dynamic that I only have to use my veto power sparingly.
Right.
And that's what I try to do. I try to challenge myself in a meeting to make it y'all's idea. Because what I wanted to do with Christmas Eve is to go, you all need to get your sorry behinds together and put on a good Christmas Eve service. That's what I wanted to do, but that's not what I didn't do. And what I got out of it was probably the best response for our church and for our season at the time. So if you're listening, you can email me at pastortodd@hopechurchcleveland.com. But we've decided that it's not our best foot forward to put on a Christmas Eve service. Now, I know some of you are out there like, wow, Pastor, I love Christmas Eve services. Our culture doesn't love Christmas Eve services anymore. They don't. They don't care about Christmas Eve. They don't care.
Traditions.
Yeah. Jesus is out of Christmas for most people now. It's not okay. It's not right. It's not the way it's supposed to be, but it is the culture. And so do I kill my staff on a holiday that nobody cares about Jesus just to make myself feel better about having a Christmas Eve service? So
And just to add, we're usually serving and
Right.
serving the less fortunate or those at the local jail. We're
Yeah.
doing that. We're spending our Christmas Eve morning doing
Yeah.
that anyway as a
Yeah.
staff and some of the other.
Yeah, so this year we went to the jail in the morning. We had, what was it, like 20-something people get saved at the jail. And then we turned around and did a Christmas Eve service that night. And to be honest, the most fruitful ministry part of that day was the jail ministry. Now, I'm not to say that anybody that came to Christmas Eve, I'm sure you received something from Jesus, and I'm glad. But our church, I mean, we barely got 100 people here.
Yeah.
And we'll have on Easter, we'll have 500. On a good Sunday morning, we'll have 350. And that's just like, I feel terrible asking y'all to take time away from your family on a holiday when it's not effective ministry time. Now, trust me, I've told everybody to stop whining because Easter's coming, and we will have 3 services. But Easter is still effective Jesus ministry time.
Yes.
People will come to church on Easter more than they will come to church on any other day.
Yes.
And so, excuse me, fighting seasonal allergies, but that is the time that we have to go all in, and we have to go all in on reaching the lost. And so, but my staff knows that I care about them. I'll give them the Christmas Eve. And because now I'm giving them the Christmas Eve, they'll work harder for me on Easter because I've given them a holiday that we all know is a waste. And Christmas Eve may be the most amazing service for your church. It might be. It's just not in our context.
It definitely has not been since
Yeah.
COVID.
And so, and my whole time as pastor, I've always tried to push Christmas Eve. And we are a church where most people have families. And we're not a family church, meaning people aren't coming to visit their parents and come to Christmas Eve service. Most of our people are going to visit their parents and
Yes.
joining their church
Yeah.
on Christmas Eve. And that's okay, but I can't kill my staff on a day there is no fruitful ministry. Now, we did do fruitful ministry, like I said, in the jail, and we had... It felt like we had more people there to serve the jail than we did at Christmas Eve
Yeah,
service.
it did.
It kind of felt that way. But, you have to, but the reactionary in me would be, we have to do Christmas Eve. You don't love Jesus unless you're doing Christmas Eve. But the leader in me said, we have to do what's best for the church and for the staff. And for all that. Now, I haven't run any of this by our elders, so our elders may go, Pastor, I want you to do a Christmas Eve service. And if the elders demand that I do a Christmas Eve service, which I don't know that they will, but if they do, I'll respect that. You know what I'll do? I'll come with my acoustic guitar, I'll lead worship, and I'll preach a sermon, and I'll give everybody else the time off.
And that's what we'll do. We'll stay at home.
Yeah.
And let you do it by yourself.
Yeah, you won't do that. But I'll give them the option, but they'll all come anyway.
Yeah.
But that's what I'll do, which I don't, for the record, I don't know that our elders will do that. If I pitch it to them, if they listen to this podcast, hopefully they'll understand as well. But we just got to, our emotions get us into all kinds of hot water that we're not ready for. And when we're reactionary, we're driven by our emotions. We're not driven by what the Lord has called us to do. And ultimately, ministry is a long game. And yes, we want to seek and save the lost. Yes, Christmas should be a time that we do that. But it just hasn't been the case here for us at Hope Church here in Cleveland, Texas. And I've just gone, you know what? We'll just circle the wagons that day. And what we've decided is we're going to go full bore the Sunday before Christmas, have a full on candlelight service. And I bet you that will probably be one of our higher attended days of the year. And it will be a good service because everybody has agreed to do that. And everybody feels that that's the most effective use of our time. And let's be honest, we're not the only people that are doing that. A lot of churches in our area, there are very few that do. I'm not saying that there's none, but there's very few churches that I know of that do Christmas Eve services. Most of them do what we do, which is full on Christmas. We do service the last Sunday of the year. I know a lot of churches that take a Sabbath the last Sunday of the year. I still feel like it's an effective use of our time to do the Sunday morning on the last Sunday of the year. Definitely not judging anybody that does it any different. I'm sure your decisions are the same as mine. What's best for your ministry context?
Yeah. Well, that's a really great that to me, that's one of the best examples as a leader. And especially with it being so fresh, you gave us a good perspective on handling big situations like that. But since we're so heavy in our ministry talk today, are you willing to take a little bit further about being reactionary to the church member, giving some irrelevant feedback or even hard feedback, or walking them through?
So which one you want to tackle first, irrelevant or hard?
Ooh, I'll let you pick.
Okay. Well, I'll just answer both. Hard feedback is hard feedback. I mean, sometimes a church member tells us something that we know is the truth, but it's still hard to hear. But you have to handle them with grace. A lot of times when a church member gives me hard feedback and I agree with them, I'll just agree with them. But what I won't ever do is throw the staff member under the bus. So if they're coming to me about a staff member, I'll take the blame for it. As the pastor, before I'll throw the staff member under the bus, even if it was maybe even if it was their problem. Say if somebody's coming to me about an issue, we'll just say for the kids department, I'll say, you know what, I should have put policies and procedures in place to prevent that from happening. Is my fault. We should have done that. Or, for worship, we didn't sing my favorite song. I'm sorry. We didn't sing my favorite song. I'm sorry. I'll say, well, I give Mo, full liberty to pick what she wants. And I'm sorry that you told me that we need to sing your favorite song, but I just give Mo the liberty to do whatever she wants. And honestly, I suggest she do songs, and she doesn't even do the songs that I suggest. So I'm just kidding. Mo does the songs I suggest occasionally if she likes the song too.
I get to pick mine for the conference.
Oh, you do? Mm-hmm. Well, you get more latitude sometimes than I do, but her and I,
She loves me.
we're both musicians, and so we really like certain songs for different ways. Most of the time when she tells me no on a song, it's because maybe we can't pull it off as well as it sounds on the
she's educated Justin and I when we hear something or songs that we've sang at other churches years ago, and it's really cool because she'll explain the why of why it's not a good worship song, so that's cool. So what about when you have when you are in the moment with a church member, because you said we kind of touched on the word irrelevant and hard, but it can be a very emotional situation. So what are some things that have been helpful for you to really ground yourself in an emotional situation so that you don't react in the moment? And is there anything that you've done? Is a mentor that you've had give you some things to put in place?
A lot of times when people come at you hot, they're hot and they've had a lot of time to think about it, and you are just now thinking about it. And so what I've had to learn is sometimes you have to tell people, can you give me a minute, or can you give me this amount of time, and set amount of time, because people don't want you to kick it out further and never give a solution. Can you give me some time to think about this? Because, for me, especially if it's a difficult situation, I'd like to get on the phone and talk to somebody else and say, hey, here's what's going on. What would you do? Because somebody can give you some perspective that, especially if it's stuff you're not really qualified. Sometimes we run into situations
really good
as pastors that we're not qualified to make. In this last building project we had some code things come up that I was not qualified to make the decisions on, and I had to make some calls to figure out what we were doing. And a lot of people, I found out that. So we were running up against that you had to have a sprinkler system if your square footage or seating capacity was so much. Well, what we had to do, we were going to run into that. So I was like, how the heck do I figure out how to get around this? Well, I talked to an architect. And an architect said, well, there's a loophole in the law that your stage space is sacred space, and it doesn't count against your square footage, and they can't, because it is separation of church and state. They can't tell you what to do with that space. And so now if you come into our sanctuary, we have a very large stage, and a lot of people would say the stage is too large, and I would agree with them on that. But the stage is as large as it had to be. Meaning, if I made the stage any smaller, I would have to put in probably a $50,000, $60,000 sprinkler system that we didn't have in the budget. And so we had two options.
Ministry people all pastors.
Which we had two options. One, go before the church and say, hey, I'm going to need $50,000 more money in this capital campaign than I told you, or we can just make the stage big. And so we did what most people would do. We just made the stage big. Now, the cynical people are like, well, just make the stage big, and then when the city's not watching, make it smaller. There's ethical things there as well, because you want the city to be on your good side. And so we did it, and we went right up. And I was so irritated because we did everything they asked us to do, and then they came back to me and said, well, we need to do a drainage survey. I was ticked. You want to talk about reactionary? I may have said a bad word, and I know pastors are not allowed to say bad words. I probably said heck or something like that, right? And anyway, and I just said, I've done everything they've asked me to do. I mean, we have a sidewalk. If you come out to Hope Church, 2125 North Nolan River Road, we have the only sidewalk on our city block. You know why? Because they required us to do it. You know how much it costs? $20,000, right? I was ticked that they made us put it in. And then this time they wanted me to do a drainage study, which would have been like $7,000, $8,000. I'm like, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing it. So I set a meeting. I said, listen, guys, and I wasn't reactionary, and this is the only reason I think I got my way. I just said, hey, listen, I'm getting rid of 10 yards of grass and putting in a roof line. Do you really think it's going to change the drainage path of our property that much? Do you really think requiring a church to do that is really necessary?
Right. Asking some questions.
Yeah. And they went, you're right. It's really not that big a deal. We'll just stamp it and send it on. Now, had I come at them and said, you sorry, blah, 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 all kinds of, like watching cops, beep, beep, right? If I'd have come at them that way, they would have been like, well, you're going to do it no matter what.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that brings up, that gives a great example is that I think people stop, and I am one of them, but I was raised in a generation to be seen and not heard and not ask questions.
Yeah, me too.
So I sometimes completely forget as an adult, I can ask questions to diffuse the situation, calm myself down and get more information. And I kind of get stuck for a minute. But when you are able to ask questions, it's like it vanishes almost instantly. Sure. Because you're now communicating. So, but because what I see people struggle with is one, they react when they don't know and they feel backed into a corner or challenged or insecure. But I also see that people react when they don't like the answer that they're getting. But most importantly, I think sometimes the reactionary, when you're in a personal situation, like in a close situation like the church member, staff member, whatever, when you're close like that, I think sometimes it lets us know when we need to address the relationship. Yeah. How the reactions come out. And so that is something that I have personally been focusing on is where's that coming from and why am I not able to ask questions? Why am I responding in that way? So where does the responsibility lie for a pastor or a ministry leader or even just someone in their professional life that's over a large amount of people? Where does the responsibility lie for them to decipher where the reaction is coming from so that they can address it?
Well, a lot of times with people, when they're upset with you, they're not necessarily, 9 times out of 10, they're not upset with you. They're just upset with what went on. And I think instantly we take it personal, like, well, they're mad at me. But especially with church people, with me as the pastor, they're probably frustrated with 15 things in their life that don't really have to do with me. But because I'm the pastor, the safe place, they feel like they can take it out on me. Yeah. And what you have to do is you have to learn to really dig down, and ask the question, what are you really upset about? Are you really upset about this or are you upset about something else? Because what I found with most people is they're not upset about what you took away. A lot of times people are really upset when you take things away. Like a few years back, we took away the Easter egg hunt. And people were really upset that we took away an Easter egg hunt. But it wasn't the fact that they were upset with a lot of things, but they didn't take the time to go, why are you getting rid of the Easter egg hunt? Because once I sat down with these people and explained to them the why behind it, that it lasts 30 seconds, it's $4,000. And don't you think we could use $4,000 in a more effective way on Easter Sunday than in a 30-minute egg hunt that fills your kids full of sugar that takes 2 seconds, right? Once you explain it that way, they're like, oh, well, that makes sense. But most people aren't sitting in there and listening to the perspective that you have to deal with. And you've had time to sit and think and process. And when they find out, you're taking away the one thing that they loved at church. The only reason I came to church on Easter was for the Easter egg hunt. You're taking away the one thing that they love. But really what you're not taking away the one thing they love. You're giving more opportunity to invest in the thing that we're all here for.
Yes.
And
the most important thing.
But most people don't have the patience, forethought, maybe sometimes the intelligence, and I don't want to say people aren't intelligent, but
it's the stop and think.
Right.
It's that to even the thought. It's a learned skill to me. To think beyond your own thoughts and feelings. Right. You have to condition yourself to do things.
Well, and it takes time to learn to go past your feeling.
Yeah.
And get to the wisdom. And most people. A lot of people just won't ever make that shift because they're just fine. Like we talked about in the last episode, they're just fine with being comfortable. And so, being reactionary, I call it being redneck. My redneck side.
I don't
comes
know.
out.
The way you're talking, like the word that keeps coming to my mind is it's foolish behavior.
Well, sure,
And we
yeah.
know what the Bible says about foolish behavior.
Right. Well, I always joke, my redneck's coming out. My redneck is I'm not going to be controlling myself because I don't have to be because I'm a redneck, right?
Yeah.
But that's the thing. That's just like you said, foolish thinking.
Well, because you said to get to the wisdom, the maturity to get to the wisdom.
Right. Well,
so it is foolish behavior.
Well, there is. What people don't understand is there's reasons behind everything. But many times they're only concerned with what affects them.
We're so selfish.
Yeah. Well, now I have to do my own Easter egg hunt, not have an Easter egg hunt at the church. Instead of going, really, is it really an effective use of tithe dollars to spend $4,000 on plastic eggs and sugar just for kids to hunt for 2 minutes? When we could take $4,000. Do you know how many times we could fill the food pantry full?
Amen.
And
Yes.
boiling over with
Yes.
$4,000.
Yep.
Oh my
yeah.
gosh! I mean, we could impact 400 families.
I hear Amanda
with
running down the
4,000.
hall. What did y'all say? I'm getting what?
Well, and that's the thing. But really, we are looking for the self gratification in that moment when all of those tithe dollars, all of that money could be spent on something that is far more effective for the kingdom of God. And I'm not saying Easter egg hunts don't draw people in. Sure, they draw people in, but oftentimes they're just drawn in for that moment.
For the day, not for discipleship
Right.
and the church.
But when you can meet a need, they're drawn in and they're more interested to hear what you say, beyond that.
That's good. So it sounds like at the end of the day, if you find yourself, if you're not sure if you're a reactionary person, I would say go ask your boss or your spouse.
Or your spouse. Yeah. Well,
I wouldn't ask both of them. It might be too much, but I would say that to be aware that it's foolish behavior and it's always going to leave you in the red a little bit. There's never a time that it's going to help you. And I think the Karen mentality in the world kind of drives that a little bit, that helps you get your way, but it really doesn't.
Well, and the ignorance in us would say, well, that's just the way that I am.
Or that's how you're being heard.
Yeah, that's the way that I am. And people should accept me because I'm opinionated and I've always been opinionated.
Or the worst. That's how God made me.
And I'm always going to be opinionated and you're just going to have to learn to love it. Well, what if God didn't create you that way? You're just that way by default because that's comfortable for you. What if you just learn to control your mouth and you just learn to just sometimes instead of speaking, sit and think for a minute. And I think we're not good at that. We're listening to people to react instead of listening to learn. And if we'd learn about one another, we may not react so much because, oftentimes, there's been times that April gets frustrated in the moment, but she's not frustrated with me. She's frustrated that her daughter got her hand slammed in the bathroom door.
Oh my gosh.
This morning. She popped off at me, but she's not mad at me. She's mad because her daughter, she's worried about her daughter because her hand
popped
got
off at you?
You
My
didn't
bad.
pop off at me.
Oh,
I'm just
okay.
using that as an example. But it's easy for us to have a bad morning, come into work, pop off to somebody, and now we've got a bigger problem because we were dictated by our emotions.
Well, and even so, I would say that we are so distracted. I don't even want to use the word busy. We're so distracted that we are reactionary and don't even realize it simply because, like, I'll use my 12-year-old as an example. You interrupt his Fortnite time and he's on a streak and FNCS, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
He is frustrated and he reacts and responds in a way that I'm like, don't talk to me like that.
Right.
Whereas really I could just look at him and say, hey, come back down to earth for a minute. That was very rude. That was very disrespectful. But I react. Why? Because I'm in the middle of being a mom. He's in the middle of his, Fortnite coma. And
Well, that's the end of the world, Mom.
Yeah,
I mean, Fortnite. You got to keep your streaks going.
I get it. He's talented in all the things, but also it's just a game.
Agreed.
So there's some self-regulation and self-control that is involved in there and really seeking. And I would say everyone needs to seek out and ask the Lord to reveal to them where the reactionary parts of them are and where they could mature, because it's only going to make them a better leader.
Well, and I would say we're reactionary by nature. I mean, learning to be controlled in our speech is a learned behavior. It's not often.
And it has to be taught.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to. You don't have to teach your kid to snatch a toy out of somebody's hand and go mine, right? You know, you don't walk around the house and snatch the remote out of Justin's hand and say mine, right? You're not teaching.
Sometimes.
You're not teaching Brooklyn that. She just learns that herself.
She's just like that.
Yeah, and so we are reactionary by nature, and we have to teach ourselves to be calculated in our responses. And usually that comes with shutting up and listening, which is not easy, and thinking about our response, and not always responding out of emotion, because your emotions will make more problems for you than any other part of your body, because and
they're so unpredictable.
Well,
and not honest all the time.
Well, and we can all think back to emotional decisions we make and go, you know, if I could have just been level-headed in this moment, it would have saved me a lifetime of heartache. You know, well, I mean, think about people that get married too quickly. They're in love, but what they are is in lust, and they don't think clearly.
There's a sermon series there.
Yeah, they're thinking with their hormones, and now they're stuck with this person until death do you part. And then now you're like, well, what do I do? You know, I really didn't like this person at all. It was just my hormones. So, and the same is true with conversations. You're really not that mad. You're just frustrated in the moment.
I am.
You know?
I really am that mad.
You're just frustrated in the moment.
Yes.
And you'll get over it.
Yeah.
And you know.
So then, is it worth it? And especially like a lot of people hating to apologize. Is it really worth it to be? Because I hear a lot of, and I went through this in my journey. Then I would just be apologizing for it. Right. And one day Justin's like, "Well, then just don't do it."
Right.
Rude.
Well, with Crystal, so her and I are fiery, and we're both very opinionated. And we've gone through cycles to where we just don't want to say, we don't always want to say that we're sorry with each other. But really, for me, I don't need a sorry. I just need you to be cool and let's just move on. But Crystal really she needs the sorry.
And all the women said amen.
She needs the sorry.
Yeah.
And what she wants me to do is come up to her.
And you need to mean it.
And,
it needs to be perfect.
Yeah, and I have to mean it. I have to say what I'm sorry for, and just give a long treatise.
Crystal.
Right, yeah. But what I found is I can catch her off guard if she's in the middle of just being mad at me, which happens mostly because of me, but she's in the middle of being mad at me, and I just go, hey, I love you. I'm sorry I did this. I really don't want to fight. I just want to love you. Will you accept my apology? And that's the key. I've learned to say at the end, will you accept my apology? Whew, that'll change everything.
Sounds way better than I'm sorry.
Well, you say I'm sorry, but then.
Yeah, but that seals the deal. Right,
but you're putting the onus on them. I have apologized, but are you willing to forgive me?
Right, but we're using this analogy in a marriage setting, which is great. And I would even say most people would go, if I said, I don't want that to be the exception.
Sure.
Or, I mean, I don't want it to be the rule. I want it to be the exception. But can you imagine having to have those conversations with your boss?
Well,
do you really want to sit down and tell your boss all the time, hey, I was just hangry. I needed a Snickers. I wasn't really mad at you. I was mad at my dog. And my kid slammed the other kid's fingers in the door and blah, blah, blah.
But we don't have that level of intimacy. I mean, I don't need you. I don't need you to tell me.
It needs to be.
Yeah, I don't need you to tell me. I don't need you to go, I'm sorry, will you forgive me? I don't need you to. Yeah, I don't need you. I don't need you to say, will you forgive me? You know, I mean, yeah, if you say that you're sorry, I forgive you.
But my point is that if you are in the habit of controlling that and you're in a habit of managing yourself and managing your response time and your reactions and your emotions are in check, then you don't need to be concerned with being reactionary.
Right. Well,
there is not any time that I can think of that me being reactionary, except for one, and even then I could have handled it better recently, that it benefited and fully accomplished what I needed to accomplish. If anything, about 20 minutes later, the cortisol subsided, and so did my adrenaline, and I went, ugh.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's where you got to learn to just be quick to apologize. Mm-hmm. I mean, just go back and say, hey, I'm sorry. This. It doesn't excuse my behavior, but I'm not mad at you. I just needed a Snickers, right? Betty White.
Yeah.
The Snickers commercial.
Yeah.
Although, going back to our health conversation, don't eat a Snickers. It's not going to do anything for you. Eat a hamburger.
I don't know. It helped me on Sunday for small group.
What were you eating this small group?
It was a king size. It's called a Reese's Fast Break.
That's what it looked like.
If you are a Reese's person, I highly encourage that you have one. They're delicious.
Yeah, April
Just all the right textures.
April Miss Healthy over here. Don't put chemicals in your body. Walks into my small group with a big old Reese's Fast Break. I'm like, what is she eating?
I also had 2 bags of Nerd Ropes.
Oh,
down
wow.
At the bottom.
Oh, wow. Well, yeah.
Hey, it did what I've had sick kids, and Sunday was a day. So
Sundays are long days, especially you got sick kids. So.
All right. Well, that wraps it up, Pastor Todd. I think a lot of people need to step off and reevaluate when they're being reactionary in their responses. And you've given us some good things to chew on. So we will talk to you next time.
All right. Thank you for listening to the Todd Barham Leadership Podcast. If you're watching us on YouTube, press subscribe. If you're listening to us on any podcasting platform, you could rate and review us. That would really help out the show. We'll see you next time.